Good evening. Welcome at our second live stream. Last time it was all about Azure Sentinel, and tonight we have all about Microsoft Threat Protection. And tonight I am together with some fellow colleagues and also some Microsoftie is in the show. My name is Frans Oudendorp. I'm a lead security consultant at Wortell. And all the others I have with me. Maarten, can you please introduce yourself?
Of course, Frans. I'm Maarten Goet. I'm a Microsoft MVP. I've been renewed for the 14th year, so I'm probably a dinosaur by now in MVP country. And a regional director, and I have the opportunity to lead the Wortell security division.
Great. And on the other side, I have Gianni Castaldi. Gianni, can you introduce yourself?
Of course. I'm Gianni Castaldi. I'm a security engineer, aka Ninja Cat at Wortell, and I manage the MDR team, incidents, and the whole Microsoft security stack.
Great. And all the way from Dubai, we have Milad from Microsoft. Milad, can you introduce yourself?
Yes, sure, Frans. Thank you for having me. Hey, folks, my name is Milad. I'm a Principal Security Program Manager with the Microsoft Threat Protection's Customer Experience Engineering team.
Great. And also we have our social media sidekick, and that's Maurice. Maurice, can you introduce yourself?
Yes, Frans, thank you. Yes, I'm Maurice de Jong, and I'm a developer at Wortell for the Vidara platform. And today I will be handling the questions that are sent at Twitter at the hashtag AskWortell. So please send us your questions about Microsoft Threat Hunting Protection. And well, back to you, Frans.
Okay, thank you all for the short introduction. And let's start and kick off with MTP. Maarten, Microsoft delivered the Microsoft Threat Protection environment. What's in the MTP stack actually? Can you shortly explain what the MTP stack is?
Of course. Well, Microsoft Threat Protection is really bundling all of their capabilities into one umbrella that's then called Microsoft Threat Protection. And I think we've seen a lot of the advanced threat protections already at certain areas like the identity or the endpoint. But what you see with attacks now evolving is that the cyber kill chain is really all about identities plus endpoints plus user data plus cloud apps plus infrastructure. And where we get signals from all of these individual products that help us protect those workloads, we want to turn it into one bigger use case, one bigger overview, and understand better how of these things correlate. So we see that Microsoft Threat Protection really is about combining those four pillars, so identities, endpoints, user data, cloud apps and infrastructure, and then providing you also with one console and one way of using that data and protecting across the kill chain.
So it's more than only identity and so forth. Yeah. Okay, Milad, there are also, I might have mentioned already, there are a few ATP products in the MTP suite. Are they one or the same? What's the purpose of that? Can you help us with that?
Absolutely, great question. Thanks for asking, Frans. Basically, with Microsoft Threat Protection, we looked into the aspects of that was referred to by Maarten, like the identity piece, the endpoint layer, the cloud apps, as well as the email and collaboration aspects. Within each individual pillar, Microsoft has today best of suite solutions like Office 365 ATP, Defender ATP, Azure ATP, and Microsoft Cloud App Security. So what Microsoft Threat Protection does, it connects all these different workloads together and brings them up under security.microsoft.com as a one unified pre and post breach technology as an enterprise defense solution.
Great. One of the ATP products is MDHP. With an MDHP, what is it and what can we do with it? Can you help us with that, Maarten?
Yeah, well, MDHP stands for Microsoft Defender Advanced Threat Protection, and Defender is really targeted towards the endpoint, really understanding your security posture there and protecting you from threats that are known, but even some of the unknowns, looking at patterns and some of the things there. It's built on the next-gen antivirus that is already built in. And then we see that we can add functionalities like threat and vulnerability management, understanding what vulnerabilities are on those systems and how to solve those by applying patches and protections there. It helps you understand attack surface reductions by adding insights to ASR rules and helping you apply those ASR rules to really protect your endpoint a bit better. It has, of course, EDR technology, so endpoint detection and response, again looking at patterns and things happening on that endpoint. What I'm personally very interested in and excited about is the auto investigation and remediation. So what you see is that once we do think there's a threat, we collect the files and we have a bit of an understanding of what's happening, then potentially also remediate, perhaps even isolate to make sure the machine is safe and not attacking other items in our network. And we can, of course, on top of that, engage some of the threat experts to, if we find a proper threat, to really mitigate and do an incident response on. It is all governed by centralized configuration, so we can go into one console, and whether it's threat and vulnerability management or seeing the real incidents happen, you can go to that console to understand. And with MTP, even combine it into this bigger overview. And that's something that helps you a lot. It also provides you with advanced hunting, but we'll talk about that later, I guess.
Yeah, that, we will talk about that later. And MDHP, is that only for Windows? Is that for other OSs?
Yeah, it certainly is for other operating systems. We've seen a lot of announcements in the past days and weeks, and one of the things you might not know, or people that are tuning into the live stream don't know, is that we have actually an agent for Linux. So on your Linux server, let's say it's your Ubuntu Linux, we can actually then run MDHP on top of that endpoint.
And is that something you can show?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead. Yeah, I'll share my screen. I'm logged into an Ubuntu Linux machine, and I've got MDHP installed by running the command apt-get install MDHP. I've run through the onboarding sequence, and I now have the command MDHP to my availability. And when I run MDHP health, I actually see that the agent is running, it's healthy, it's licensed, and it's reporting into my production environment. It's on the inside of FastString. You can choose the channel, and then get protection on this machine. When I run a sample, let's say I want to run curl and get the sample ICAR, and I'll go back into history to make sure I don't mark a typo. I can go to icar.org, which is a sample virus, not a real virus. I can download it and go into downloads. And you see it never touched disk. It tried to save it, and then MDHP actually kicked in. When I run MDHP threat, and I say MDHP threat list, I actually see that it found the ICAR test file, it detected it properly as a virus, and it quarantined. And I can actually now then start working with that quarantine to maybe isolate it as such. When I go to the portal, and I go to Defender into my machine, it's a machine called, here we go, into VM Linux. And it reports as a proper machine like Windows. I'll zoom in a bit so that everybody can see it well. It has 2 open incidents, so when I log on the alert, it actually gives us the Defender ICAR test file. So that's something you can take. The Linux side of things you can take.
Okay, great. And also we have Android. I can show you something about Android. Besides Linux, there are other OSs. So let's dive into Android. If we can publish my screen. Then what I have on the screen now is my Android phone, and on the Android phone is fully managed by the Intune environment, and with that we have the possibility to deploy Defender ATP. It's fully enrolled on this machine, and with that now you see my device is fully protected. If I go to the Play Store, for example, and what you see, I've already tested it with one of the iCar files, but then when I install that one, it will be downloading, installing, and when it pops up, there it is. This is the one from the phone. It's double, and we have threads found within Defender ATP, and we can directly delete it again from my Android phone. But also web protection, what was showing in the console. When I look, we have app security. One step back, app security and web protection. So when I go to my Outlook, I've received an email, and when I click on that link, I can choose which browser I will use. I will use the Chrome variant. When I open this screen, then it's what you see. It's a demonstration phishing website, and it will be directly after that. It will be blocked by Smart Screen. Okay, when we look into the console, then we have a suspicious activity. There is a device tried access a phishing website, and what you can see, it's one step back. My Android phone has a suspicious activity detected around a phishing website. That's the first one, and there should also be an incident around an iCar file that's detected on my mobile phone. So we can take action in the MTP environment, in MDHP, for example, to hunt across multiple OSs and detect every stuff.
That's great, because that means we can now have then Windows, Linux, Android, everything in one console.
Yeah, if we have it on that OSs, are we missing some OSs at the moment?
Well, I think one of the things that's the key thing that's still missing is perhaps the iOS version of MDHP. Luckily, we've seen recent announcements where Microsoft will be publishing and coming out with an iOS version, much like the Android version. So I think once we get that out, we can pretty much handle the majority of endpoints in the world: iOS, Android, Windows, Linux, and of course Mac systems. So I think in general we're in pretty good shape once we get iOS later this summer.
Yeah, absolutely. Great. Gianni, you're working on our MDR team, the Managed Detect and Respond team. From an MDR perspective, do you work a lot with MTP and MDHP?
Yes, we work a lot with it to first handle the incidents, but also do monitoring, do hunting, and also create new detections and improving the posture of our customers.
Yeah, MTP is more than only MDHP. Maarten mentioned already. How can I hunt across all these solutions, like endpoint, mail, data?
On the majority of the ATP data and the MCAS is already onboarded in MTP, so you can use your detections in MTP.
Yeah, great to hear. Milad, you have created an MTP advanced hunting cheat sheet together with some technical fellows. Maarten, for example, has joined you on that. Why did you set this up? What is the reason behind this?
Yeah, I mean, the idea was really like when I looked into like curriculums that are out there, when I looked into how we in the security world need to think about all these different syntaxes, there's pretty much a cheat sheet for every like red team tool out there. And then there are cheat sheets out there for some of the blue team tools. And I thought, how about we create a cheat sheet that is visualizing very quickly like the frequently used queries from SOC analysts. So I reached out to a number of my friends, including, of course, Maarten, and said, hey, what are like these typical queries that you're running inside your organization? And we came together virtually, and we said, okay, let's merge all these different queries that we see are getting frequently used and just put them up in one document, right? It started as a side project, and we put it up on GitHub. Now also it's available in the Microsoft official repository. So, and we see like a tremendous interest from the community. They're downloading it and using it. I can say like I'm pretty much getting every second day or so a question or two from the community on even suggestions on things to add, things to improve. So this is really the reason. Like we wanted to have a quick way to understand what are the frequently used queries and make it as easy as possible for people to consume that information.
Yeah, it's not a static document, so it will probably be updated in the near future.
Yes, so I mean, I started on this like as a side project, but now I think given the interest, definitely makes sense to have like an ongoing rhythm where we are looking into it and how to improve it. At least from my side, even I got like 15 queries submitted through Twitter or other channels from different security analysts around the world who want to contribute to that. So we're definitely looking into that.
Yeah, great. Gianni, if I come back to you, we talked about multiple solutions like Office ATP, MDHP, that's in the MTP stack. How can we do something with the kill chain? If something is coming in, what can we do with the MTP stack?
Yes. You collect the data in your MTP, so once everything is set up and connected, you can see the secure score, all the items from the different products you see in the portal. And also you can create incidents based on the components. So if you're using Office ATP and Defender ATP, you can also correlate those into alerts.
Is there something you can show?
Yes, of course. You have any suggestions what you would like to see?
Now, if you have an attack kill chain, so multiple solutions are involved. Is there something happening in our environment?
Let's see. Create a bigger screen. So over here we have a multi-stage incident to one endpoint. And over here you can see that there are two correlated items. So you have the in this case it was a test item and it's correlated to a custom network indicator. So that way you can correlate an initial access attempt and a suspicious activity. But you can also use items from Office ATP and Defender to create other alerts.
So what you're saying, if a mail is coming in through Office ATP, someone is clicking on the link, it's running something on an endpoint that's doing some with credentials.
Yes.
That is everything that can be detected within the MTP suite.
Yes, you can do that. You can see the suspicious URL clicked, and then it gets links to the file you downloaded, maybe a jar file or maybe a malicious PDF. And if you open that, you can see the URL which is opened from the PDF file, and that way you can display the whole attack chain through a single pane of glass.
So it's not only disconnected solutions, but that are connected solutions where we have insight in all the activities that are happening in our environment.
Yes.
Yeah.
So now you can join the cloud-based and also the MDP, the on-prem, the virus scan, and you can join everything together.
Yeah, and I already asked that Milad like the cheat sheet with advanced hunting. What can we do? Can you show something in the MTP portal around advanced hunting?
That's for me. The advanced hunting, yes.
Yeah.
Let's see. If you go to advanced hunting, you have several features. You have all the schemas on the left side, which you can see all the components you can query.
So every table data that's in the MTP stack is available, and you can do KQL with that.
Yes, that's correct.
And KQL, that's custom query language?
That's true. And it's a bit of a mixture between Java, because you can JavaScript, because you have functions, and you can also it's a bit of SQL. So it's a good mixture to query the security products, but also Exchange and also the Azure data lakes, for example. So it's the one query language for all the products.
Yeah, and if you're not proficient yet on KQL, one of the tips you have is that you can go to Pluralsight. There's a great course, I think it's 3.5 hours or something.
Yeah.
And it runs you from all the basic commands all the way to advanced operators. And it's quite easy to master. We've seen people picking it up really easily. And because it's in so many products now, especially the security related products, I would say that KQL is a basic skill you would probably want to learn.
Pro tip for this evening, go to Pluralsight and do the KQL training. You can start really quick with that.
Absolutely.
And if we look into the MTP Advanced Hunting Portal, do you have already a KQL available for us, what you can show?
Yes, of course. I've got a KQL regarding TVM, because you have a lot of data in TVM, and you can run queries on that data. So, for example, if you have a query over here, the report card for TVM, I call it, and there you take all the vulnerabilities and all the risks, you put them in a single query, and then you can create a report or a working list from all your devices and who are most at risk. And you can also see what kind of exploits are there and which kind of vendors are being used, and also how many exploits are there available.
Okay, great. Maurice, I will go back to you for the first time. Do we have already some social media questions? And do you have some giveaways what you can give the people that ask questions?
Yeah, I really think we need to put that, we have to tell them, because we don't have any questions yet. So there are some tags you can put on your laptop, and we have some socks. And you can win them with your best question that you put on Twitter with hashtag #AskWortell.
Okay. Thank you, Maurice. I will come back later to you to see if we have some questions. Maarten, we have already talked a really bit about hunting and queries and Gusto. What is your top 5 hunting queries at this moment?
Well, I think that there's a lot of top 5. My personal top 5 is the one I think we found that Milad compiled in his cheat sheet, and that's where you see, for instance, one that's based off of Office ATP, pulling a SHA-256 hash out of a text file and looking for email attachments that match that hash. You can do that easily in MTP because the Office ATP data is there. Second, identifying files which had more than 10 downloads, access or deletions in CASB protected apps, so MCAS data. That's also available in MTP. Or finding Active Directory accounts inactive for the last 14 days through Azure ATP that you can query. Or finding endpoints, that's my personal favorite, connecting to a specific domain. Maybe there's a rogue domain you found, an IOC, a threat indicator that you want to find which endpoints have connected, perhaps even in the past, to this domain, and maybe isolate them. That's data we can take from Defender ATP in MTP. And then looking up emails that in the last 7 days had a verdict of malware. Those are always suspicious, but maybe there's a pattern, maybe specific users or something that you want to follow up on that you get through Office ATP. So I think those are top 5 that you can also find in the cheat sheet, but happy to hear on Twitter or elsewhere what your personal top 5 is.
Yeah, and if there are suggestions for Milad, please let him know. So probably it can be on the cheat sheet later on. Milad, Treadhunt is also a tool that's in your GitHub. What's that, and how can we use it? What is it?
Yeah, honestly, I did not expect the success of Treadhunt being like so successful. It came out of an idea during the night. I've been looking into essentially generating a bunch of alerts in my backside Microsoft Defender ATP tenant, just from a learning perspective. And at one point, I got very frustrated because, yes, I could download, like from VT or wherever, some malware. I could find some techniques every here and there. But really what I wanted is just to generate a bunch of alerts and don't necessarily risk compromising my test machine. Right, so I was thinking, okay, so how about if I just have a simple script that generates a bunch of alerts by simply mimicking what the malicious file would be doing. So that's really what Treadhunt is, and I put it up on GitHub almost now a year ago. I just looked it up. In 4 years, Treadhunt is celebrating 1 year, and the purpose of that is simple. Like if you're looking into understanding how Microsoft Defender ATP visualize certain alerts, like when it comes to tampering with the operating system, when it comes to data exfiltration. You can pretty much put Treadhunt on an endpoint, run it. It's a PowerShell script. It gives you a few options what you can run. And once you run it, you will see in literally no time the corresponding alert surfacing up in Defender ATP. And then you can, at your own pace, learn essentially, understand the context behind the alert, look into the machine timeline, understand what happened before and after. So really, it's a tool for you to help build out your muscles when it comes to DFIR in a very simple way.
Can we only use it with MDHP, or can we use it with other tools as well?
You can use it with other tools. I personally haven't tested it with other tools, but I don't see a reason why you shouldn't be able to do it.
Okay, let's test it out. If it's in the wild, we can test it. Gianni, when I look at into advanced hunting within the MDHP, we can correlate alerts within the Microsoft solutions already. How can we extend this with, for example, an on-prem firewall?
That's a good question. You can correlate the alerts from MTP in Azure Sentinel, and then you can combine your other inputs like your Palo Alto firewalls, your other security tools, and then you can correlate those in analytics rules or in even playbooks or whichever you like to defend your company.
And that's Azure Sentinel?
Yes, that's correct.
And Azure Sentinel, Maarten, you have wrote about it a lot, I think, and presented. What is Azure Sentinel exactly?
Well, it's something Microsoft released last year. It's their cloud native SIEM. So it's a service you can take from Azure and really use it as a central point to correlate data, to take in data from multiple systems, correlate data, and then respond to that data or threats based on what Gianni just said, maybe playbooks and such. So it's a powerful cloud-native SIEM. Now, it living in Azure doesn't mean it's only limited to the Microsoft Cloud. You can take in data from AWS or, like you said, Gianni, the on-prem firewall. So there's a lot of data we can take in. There's a lot of native connectors that you get out of the box. So that's really a couple of clicks and you're ready to go. And the interesting part is you pay only for what you use. So it's not something where you pay per event ingested or per something per second. No, it's really the data that's stored and perhaps retained for a longer time that you pay for. But then it's very interesting that we can just take this, and from smaller companies all the way to bigger enterprises can then embrace a SIEM solution and correlate data with other parties.
So if I have only MTP, we can extend it with Azure Sentinel to add additional products on-prem and other tools, cloud tools, maybe to extend it and to give a good overview of the full environment.
Absolutely, it allows to extend MTP and MDHP and all of the other great products. It's really something that helps you paint that bigger picture and maybe make it easy for you to follow up on. However, it's not necessary. You can have MTP without Azure Sentinel and vice versa. And we do see that MTP already brings you a lot of power to the table. So if you're very concerned about the posture of your endpoints, you should definitely already start today with looking at MDHP and MTP. If you're already somebody who can handle a bigger security concern, then Azure Sentinel can add to that mix.
Yeah, great. Milad. With COVID-19 and the push to work from home, what were the challenges you have observed in, for example, the Microsoft Threat Protection world?
I think one of the challenges that we've been seeing talking to our customers is that security wasn't necessarily top of mind when the IT department had to push on enabling secure, like remote worker scenarios, right? Supporting work from home. And I think now, after this workforce being out of the office, working from home for a while, security is now coming back into the foreground, where they're saying, well, what about security, right? So it goes back to many of these principles that we within the security domain have been preaching for a long time, right? Think about like multi-factor authentication, think about conditional access, and making sure even that the devices that are out there are essentially up to date, right? Are patched with at least the latest security updates. So a lot of the opportunity here is now actually for those customers that had to push and go so fast to enabling work from home, now looking from a security standpoint and say, how do we actually think about securing the remote workers, right? And I think from a Microsoft threat protection perspective, there are a few aspects on how we are supporting it, right? One is, of course, like giving the fact that from an endpoint standpoint, like we don't have an agent, right? It's fully like embedded into the operating system when we think about Windows 10. Now, this comes super handy because now when you're trying to bring back security into these remote worker scenarios, you don't need to think about how do I now deploy these agents to these devices that are not necessarily in my corporate network anymore, right? So that's an aspect where customers are choosing right now a lot, or Stack in particular, because they're saying, well, I don't need to worry and sort out how I get this agent installed. I don't need to worry about the maintenance. I just have to push a policy to these endpoints, and they are automatically onboarded, right? And then the same goes into the broader ecosystem, like things with like conditional access, MFA. These are all technologies that are out there, and all the quote unquote the IT and security department has to do is turn them on, configure them, and then turn them off, right? So that's like where we are spending a lot of time on making sure it is as easy as possible with literally one, to simplify it with one click, in order for supporting these remote worker scenarios through Microsoft Security Portfolio and Microsoft Threat Protection.
Yeah, and if we look at if there are incidents coming from remote workers, and for example, is for a SOC analyst to get contextual intelligence on and investigating an incident that's probably reporting by an home worker is doing stuff through VPN or something else. Is what's possible on that?
I think it goes back to like what we were describing earlier on with Microsoft Threat Protection and these importance about interconnectivity between these different workloads, okay? So if I think about a remote worker and their endpoint, right? So they will have, of course, this communication, right? And they will not only necessarily have communication to corporate services and resources, but they will also have probably their own personal communication, right? And that'd be social media websites, that'd be just search engines, using applications like Netflix, Spotify, and you name it, right? So there's a lot of more traffic generally out there that is not necessarily deemed to be only corporate network, right? So I think by having this interconnectivity, this helps tremendously, right? Because now through the, for example, Microsoft Cloud App Security component, you're able to understand if there's, for example, like larger data exfiltration activities happening. Through Office 365 ATP, you're still protecting the email layer. And then importantly, right, from an endpoint perspective, if there is a threat arising, right, through Microsoft Defender ATP, you're still able to protect, detect, and respond on these endpoints, right? So by using Microsoft Threat Protection, it just makes it much easier, and it brings much more efficiency back to the SOC analyst, because really from the get-go, like Microsoft, we've been talking a lot about the fact that the network perimeter, there was a shift of paradigm, right? That we've been talking for at least the last 3 to 4 years, where we're saying the historic network defense world where you build all these different barriers around the network is not necessarily the only focus anymore, right? Because we have BYOD, BYOC kind of scenarios growing over the last couple of years. So we as Microsoft, we took early this approach of saying, okay, it's not just about the network perimeter, right? It's about the identity, it's about the endpoint, it's about the apps and the email. And now we're just connecting it. So it's a win-win essentially for the SOC analysts, because they're just going on security.microsoft.com. They're just analyzing out of their incident. And if they have to get additional context when they are doing the analysis, they can always go within the same experience to advanced hunting in order to do their threat hunting activities to get additional context.
Okay, thank you, Milad, for this. I will come back shortly here to you. Maurice, do we have already questions on social media?
Yes, Frans. We have some questions, and the first one is from Bert Walters. He's asking if it's possible to query for the COVID-19 IOC. I will send it to you.
Okay, yeah, put it on the screen. That will be good. I think, Maarten, is that a question that you can answer?
Yeah, absolutely. And for those people that might not know, an IOC is an indicator of compromise. And what we've seen with COVID-19 and organizations becoming distributed organizations, that more and more you want to understand your security posture. And some of these IOCs are maybe hashes or IPs or something else that have been found, that you want to understand if your organization has been using those domains and such. One of the things you can do, and I'll show my screen, is that if you go to the advanced hunting page in Microsoft Defender ATP, you actually see that there are KQL queries you can use.
Probably, yeah, we can get it on the screen.
Yeah, I think it's here.
Yeah.
And when we go here, my favorite function is the one that uses external data. It's an operator in KQL that you can use, and let me zoom in just slightly more so you can see it. It uses external data, and Microsoft published a list on GitHub, a feed, if you will, a JSON file that you can take with all of these indicators. You can take those, maybe unpack them, expand on them, and you can actually then have them in your hunting queries, like the file SHA or anything else you can use. So I'll publish this and show you on Twitter how you can use this function.
Okay, thanks Bert for this question, so we can explain that a little bit more. Maurice, do we have other questions?
Yes, we have. We have another question from Jente van Dijk. He asks if you think if it's any useful to have ATP on iOS since it has sandboxed apps. So,
Maarten, you already mentioned iOS. Is there something you can answer, or?
Well, it's interesting what he says. There's sandbox apps, and maybe Gianni can add to this. But I think a couple of functions that you get on your mobile endpoint is, one is it looks at the URLs that you open, and that's typically something with phishing and email that you get where you don't want to go to the site first, maybe have that exploit then run. You want to make sure that before this URL is opened, even no matter on what browser, you want to make sure that it's already stopping it before you can go to that. So I think there's at least that you can use. Other things that might be of interest is just getting information from that endpoint, the fact that it's now onboarded to Defender ATP, understanding what device it is, maybe the primary user using it or wherever in the world it's roaming. Those are things that matter also. Just understanding your security posture from having device information is worth there. What are other things that might be useful?
And Gianni, I think the Play Store, the Apple Store, the App Store from, I'm an Android guy.
Yeah.
If we look into the App Store of Apple, that's really safe if an app is published, but apps can always come from another way on your phone. So probably that can be helped with MDHP on iOS.
Yes, that's true, but also if there's an application which later on launches a malicious program or used in a malicious way without Apple knowing it at first when it's published. That's also something you can detect, or maybe detect later that you had a malicious app installed. But also, for example, the browsing, you have the new the Siren web filter, which is publicly available. That's also available for your iPhone. So if someone launches a malicious or a hacking site, then you should be able to see that.
Yeah.
So it's an extended parameter firewall actually.
So what we say is actually every OS can has vulnerability, so it probably is good to have that protected, and in this way with MDHP and with Microsoft products.
Yeah, and I can imagine it's maybe like links protection and such now, but it'll evolve over time and even get more features over time. So I'd be very excited to have it on my iPhone and make sure there's an extra layer of protection. There's no one silver bullet to getting security right, so having another layer is just something that matters to me.
Yeah. And Maurice, probably we have another question.
Yes, we have another question from Dennis Rietveld. He's asking if it's possible to find clients that try to exploit or are scanning for the newest DNS vulnerability in Windows, the CVE 2020-3050, well, 1350.
Yeah, I look into Gianni.
Yes.
From our MDR, we see a lot of these messages coming in. Is there a view from your side on that?
As well, at first you have, of course, from the TVM you can see which devices are vulnerable. But then again, you can also create hunting query based on who is accessing DNS, for example. And I think Maarten also has a great idea about that.
Well, one of the things I'm excited about is the threat analytics section in Defender ATP, understanding a certain threat. And this is a new threat, right? It just was launched yesterday or the day before when the information got out. If you go to Defender ATP, the threat analytics section, and maybe we can try and share your screen. In the threat analytics section in Defender ATP, there's a new one now published just now, the CVE 1350 in Windows DNS Server. And if you click on that, you actually get more information on that threat. And interesting enough, if you scroll even further down in that same article, you get more information on the endpoints in your environment that are vulnerable to this DNS problem. So Microsoft is proactive on this. You get all the details. You don't need to scour Twitter or LinkedIn to understand it. It's here. And then when you scroll down, you get even an understanding on your environment and which devices you should start patching today, which for this RCE is pretty much every server that runs Windows DNS.
It's also great that you have the mitigation at hand, because you know which patches you need, or the register key, and also the note that you have to restart DNS. So it's a really good way not only to see what is vulnerable, but also how to mitigate it.
Yeah, Milad, is that threat and vulnerability management, is that one of the topics within MDHP that's key for Microsoft?
Absolutely. I mean, the reason why we are particular in the threat and vulnerability management market is the fact that we've been seeing this opportunity where historically you would have a solution, you would schedule a scan, then you will get the report. And many times what we've been seeing with organizations is they get the report, there is this post-mortem meeting with maybe even the vendor that has done this activity for them. And then everybody shakes hands saying, okay, this is the things that we want to fix. And then 6 months later down the line, they have exactly the same conversation, right? So the biggest differentiator, and that's why we are in this space, is we wanted to essentially change this narrative where we said, we're going to be real time there as a threat and vulnerability management solution, right? So we are utilizing Microsoft Defender ATP's sensors that are part of the operating system to continually check essentially for threats and vulnerabilities on these endpoints, and then surface up in real time in the same dashboard, so that everybody has full visibility on what is happening. And then even when it comes to the remediation step, you'll be able to create directly a ticket to the IT department, and then both departments can monitor the progress even as they are remediating these threats in real time.
And that's what you mentioned. That's for OSs, but it's extending for also software like Adobe and other stuff.
Yes, that's correct. Like it's not only for Microsoft technologies, right? We are pulling pretty much any possible CV database that is out there. It also, in addition to application vulnerability, it has the aspects of like pulling benchmarks like CIS, NIST, and so on. And so it gives you also the opportunity to check your security controls against widely adopted frameworks that are out there. So that's another aspect of the TVM capability within Microsoft Defender Advanced Threat Protection.
Yeah, great. When I go back, Maurice, was that the last question for now? And we will switch later on to you back.
Well, maybe there's another short question. It's about the mobile ATP. Sorry, guys, I don't have any visual for this, but it's on the questions list at YouTube. Is mobile ATP included in any bundle, or what is the license requirement for it?
I think Milad is the best one who can answer that question. Milad. Is there something you can say about that?
Honestly, no. And the reason for that, so I'm part of the engineering team, right? I don't want to guess in this matter. So let's follow up on this one.
Yeah, okay. And when I look for at the moment, iOS is private preview, Android is public preview. So at the moment, I think there's no clue at the moment. So that will be later on communicated from Microsoft perspective. When I look at, I have a question for Gianni. Gianni, if we have a customer, and that's the last one in the list for now, but if we have a customer that is attacked and is completely, everything is shutting down and no network connections, what can we do at a customer? Because MDHP needs an internet connection to register. What can we do with that?
You can first you have to make sure that your systems are safe. So you have to run some sort of offline scanner. For example, you can use the Microsoft Safety Scanner because that's got I think last year all the viruses of last year are covered by it. And after that's done, we recommend to open the firewall to first enroll your devices, install prepare them, then open your firewall just for the IP addresses or the DNS names of Defender, and then let them enroll. And after that's done and the MDHP is fully operational, then you can open the firewall and start rebuilding what needs to be rebuilt. Yeah,
and if a system is online and we can shut down network connections that only the IP addresses for Microsoft can be opened, so that's only connecting to MDHP, yes, then we can enroll with MDHP and so further.
Yes, it's a good thing to have a perimeter firewall so you can arrange that or do some ACLs in your routing that you can allow that traffic.
Yeah. Milad, one last question for you. Microsoft does ensure that customer feedback gets incorporated into the product development. How does Microsoft do that?
Yeah, so the way the way to think about it is, how do we, like when we think about customer feedback, you can categorize this in two buckets, right? Customers that within Microsoft we are able to reach on a one-to-one basis, right? And then of course, like how do we get the feedback from customers that we aren't able to reach on a frequent basis, or we don't have a direct touch point, right? And for the first bucket, so customers that we are reaching, so for example, my team is responsible for exactly understanding the customer scenarios, right? So what my team does is we partner with a number of larger corporations where we help them operationalize, for example, Microsoft Threat Protection. And throughout this process, we have an open conversation to deeply understand what are the use cases, what are the pain points of SOC analysts, of the threat hunters in that organization. And then we incorporate that feedback and these learnings into the product when we are working on the development of the next generation capabilities, improvement, and so on. For the other part, what we are relying on are, for example, in-product feedback opportunities, right? So, for example, if you go to Microsoft Defender ATP, on the top right side, there's this frowny face. If you click on that frowny face, actually, what it really does is you're able to send us literally a ticket with all the informations that are maybe bothering you and suggestions you might have. And what it happens in the background is it literally creates a ticket internally to us, and we are reviewing this list on an ongoing basis. And again, taking that and incorporate that into our product development cycle. And what we also do, of course, as our support organization engages on support cases, we incorporate their feedback, and also we meet with our fellow MVPs, regional directors like Maarten and others, get their feedback in, listening, and also to our partners that are also like Wortell to understand what their customers are saying. And ultimately, we are meeting on a very, very regular basis, I would say literally like on a weekly basis, to really go through these customer insights, and then we make them part of every release that we have, right? We are a very customer-centric engineering organization, and our development cycle is very agile, as many of our customers know, right? And we adapt based on what our customers are telling us.
Yeah, great to hear that all the things that we see in the wild that can be get back to the product team to be in the product later on. We have a few minutes left. I would like to ask Gianni. We have talked about KQL and advanced hunting. Is there we see several default alerts that are in the MTP and MDHP environment. Can we create custom alerts, and can you show something with advanced hunting, like data exfiltration or something, where we can create our own alerts with?
Yes, definitely. So I'll switch back to my preview. Here I've got some queries stored. One is my USB copy query. So what I'll do is first I'll generate all the devices that are being mounted in the system.
Yeah, and USB copy, you mean there is a USB drive connected to the system, and with that every data is, if data is copied from that system to that USB disk, that will be detected. And if I do that normally, yeah, probably that's normal. But how do you detect anomalies?
Yes, that's a great one. So I've shared my screen. What it is, I'll first make visible which kind of devices are mounted, and I check if the files are copied to that specific drive letter. And then you can create another list with also the USB drives if they're copied, and then what you can do is do an anomaly detection. There's a function called serious decompose anomalies, and you can use that to see if there are any anomalies based on the baseline in the series you create first. So if you have that, then you can filter out anomalies, and also maybe if you want a number, you can filter out if someone copies more than 100 megabytes and is an anomaly, then you can display them. And if you do that, you can specifically filter for certain cases, or you can also filter for if someone copies more than 10 documents, or copies certificate files, for example. And it looks a bit like I've shared my screen. So you have the device ID which we are working on. I'll make it a bit larger. And then we can see on that device someone has copied 912 megabytes on the 13th. And the normal baseline for that user is 162 megabytes. So it's like 5 times higher. And then it creates an alert, and you can see the device name. You can see, for example, which kind of drive has been used, but also which kind of files. So I've made a list of documents, and then I do a count how many document extensions have I seen, or how many system files or executables. And that's a great way to show what's happened. And also, because it's on the machine, you can see if someone is at home or at another customer or at the Wi-Fi at the Starbucks. And you can still have control over your data. And also it's good for the policy guys, because they can audit your actions and see where the company data is going.
Yeah, that's great to see. Are we able to share all the KQLs that we have shown on GitHub already, or will that be done later on?
I think it will be on GitHub this weekend.
Okay.
And also on my website, I'm building a blog site regarding Custo, and it's also will be in the show notes later.
So in the show notes later on, we will post the URLs to our KQL scripts that we have used in this live stream. One last time, Maurice, do we have questions, or should we go further?
I have one question. It's a question from Vaibhav Krishna, and he's asking if it's possible to build a custom machine learning model for anomaly detection, like DNS tunneling or network beaconing activity using ATP with the advanced hunting KQL queries.
Okay, Maarten, is this something you can answer?
Yes, absolutely. And we've seen with Gianni that within KQL there's already functions that help you with anomalies. So while he's asking about a machine learning model, do understand that even within the product and within advanced hunting, you can already use the function for anomaly detection. And that's probably also something you want to start with. Now, if you want to build machine learning models, one way to go about it is looking at the API. Advanced hunting is exposed through an API that you can access, and you can take that into a Jupyter notebook. That Jupyter notebook can live within, let's say, Azure Databricks, and that's where you could build potentially a custom machine learning model. Now that might be advanced for some of us. We're not all data scientists, so I could even imagine if you're not that great in Python yet, that Jupyter might be a step forward. So that's why we urge everybody to look at KQL with the anomaly detection first before you enter that other world. But you could go really, really advanced, maybe a topic for another live stream, if you want to build machine learning models on top of the data that you have available in MTP.
Okay, thank you. That was it from the social media channels. Milad, I have one last question for you. We talked about MTP, MDHP. How can we evaluate and start with it?
Yeah, so what my team did is we recently published a document that actually helps you jumpstart evaluating Microsoft Threat Protection. It essentially covers all the aspects on how do you literally turn on the tenant, how do you configure the underlying workloads. So what I would recommend is looking at that document. It actually sits under docs.microsoft.com. There's a vanity URL for it, which is aka.ms/mtp-eval-guide. Right, so I'm sure we can figure out how to also paste it somewhere so that people can simply click on it. Yep. Right, so this is like what I would be recommending for folks to check out and then follow.
Okay, yeah, we will post that on the show notes of this session later on. Also, your cheat sheet, the link to your cheat sheet will be published in the show notes. So, our next live stream, I will wrap it up for now because we have 1 minute left. Our next live stream will be hosted in mid-August. That will, again, about more or less the platform Azure Sentinel. Please stay updated with our social media channels to keep you updated and know when that will be happen. So thanks Maarten, Gianni, Maurice, and special thanks to Milad for joining us tonight. And thanks for you listening. Hopefully until the next time. See you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.